The city of Venice, with its labyrinth of canals and crumbling facades, has always felt like it's teetering on the edge of another world. I had spent years serving as a priest in the quiet countryside, tending to a small congregation and leading a peaceful, predictable life. But when the call came from the diocese, summoning me to San Suspiri, I felt an inexplicable chill. They said a boy was possessed, and I was to perform the exorcism. I had read about such things, trained for them even, but I had never faced one. The cathedral loomed before me as I approached, its spires clawing at the storm-heavy sky. San Suspiri had been abandoned for decades, its ornate doors sealed shut and its history whispered in dark tales of curses and restless spirits. Yet here I stood, clutching my worn Bible, staring up at the decrepit building with its crumbling statues and blackened windows. The canals lapped at the edges of the foundation, as though the waters sought to claim the place entirely. Inside, the air was thick, the scent of mildew and decay clawing at my throat. The grandeur of the cathedral was faded, its frescoes peeling and its once majestic chandeliers swaying gently in an unseen breeze. My footsteps echoed as I ventured deeper, each step weighed down by an unshakable dread. Then I saw him, Matteo, a boy no older than 12, lie on the altar as though he had been offered up as a sacrificial lamb, his body twisted unnaturally, his limbs convulsing, his eyes, God help me, his eyes were like pools of fire, glowing with an otherworldly light that seemed to pierce through my very soul. Father Antonio, the voice boomed, guttural and ancient, emanating from the boy's frail frame. You come to banish me? To cast me into the void? This city will drown as will your faith. I froze, the Bible trembling in my hands. For a moment, I felt the weight of those words sink into me, the doubt creeping in like the chill of the rising tide. But then Matteo let out a heart-wrenching cry, his voice cutting to the sinister mockery of the spirit. Help me, he begged, his voice small and fragile. I stepped closer, raising the crucifix I had clutched so tightly that its edges pressed into my palm. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I began, my voice shaking but resolute. I command you to leave this boy. The chandeliers above groaned, their chains creaking ominously. The faint sound of water trickling turned into a roar as rivulets began to seep through the stone walls, cascading down like tears. The canals were invading, their waters creeping toward the altar as though drawn to the presence of the entity. The spirit laughed through Matteo, the sound reverberating through the cavernous space. You think your God will save you? Do you not feel the city's heartbeat? It drowns beneath its own weight, and so shall you. I pressed on, reciting the rites with a fervor I didn't know I possessed. Latin verses poured from my lips as I splashed holy water onto the boy's trembling form. The water hissed and steamed upon contact, the air filling with the acrid scent of burning flesh. Matteo screamed, his voice a mix of his own agony and the enraged wail of the spirit. The walls shuddered violently, cracks spreading like veins as the cathedral groaned under pressure. From above, the faint sound of choir echoed, their once sacred hymns twisted into a mocking melody. Shadows danced along the walls, figures that weren't there but felt all too real. They jeered at me, their laughter a sinister chorus that threatened to drown out my prayers. Enough! I shouted, my voice breaking. You have no power here. Leave this boy and return to the darkness. The spirit fought harder now, Matteo's body arching impossibly high off the altar. Blood dripped from his nose, his lips forming words in a language I didn't recognize. The air grew heavy, the weight of centuries pressing down on me, suffocating me. My faith wavered, doubt creeping in like a rising tide. What if I wasn't strong enough? What if I failed him? Please, Matteo whispered, his voice breaking through the chaos. Don't stop. It was that plea that shattered my doubt. I gripped the crucifix tighter, my voice rising above the cacophony. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti, I roared, flinging holy water in wide arcs. Begone! The spirit let out an ear-splitting shriek as a blinding light engulfed the altar. The force of it knocked me backward, and for a moment I thought I might lose consciousness. But then it was over. The laughter ceased, the light faded, and Matteo lay still, his chest rising and falling as he gasped for air. Before I could approach him, the cathedral trembled once more. This time it was no illusion. The walls buckled, stone crumbling around us as the chandeliers crashed to the floor in a shower of glass and metal. I grabbed Mateo and ran, the two of us barely escaping as the cathedral collapsed behind us, consumed by the very waters that had tried to keep at bay. Outside, the storm had broken, the skies eerily calm. Mateo clung to me, his small frame trembling as he sobbed into my robes. I wanted to comfort him, to tell him it was over, that he was safe now. But as I looked out over the Grand Canal, my heart sank. The water was rising. Slowly, inexorably, it climbed higher, lapping at the edges of the city with a hunger I couldn't explain. The spirit was gone, the curse broken. And yet, Venice itself seemed to mourn, its foundations groaning as if the city knew its end was near. Even now, I can hear the echoes of that guttural voice in my dreams, mocking me. This city will drown, as will your faith. And though I saved Mateo, I wonder if I truly succeeded. For Venice continues to sink, its waters rising ever higher, and with each passing day, I feel my faith slip further away. The air in St. Augustine's orphanage was thick with the scent of decay, both physical and spiritual. It was a smell that clung to the old building like a curse, seeping into the bones of anyone who dared to walk its halls. I remember my first impression when I arrived. A tall, Gothic structure with windows that seemed to watch you, and a door that creaked as though it had witnessed the passing of countless souls. I was one of those unlucky orphans who found themselves thrown into the maw of the institution, alongside children who were broken in ways that I could never truly understand. But the others, they all whispered about the attic. They warned me, as they did every new arrival, that there was something in that place, something bad. I thought they were simply afraid of the dark, but that was before I experienced it for myself. The night the horrors began was stormy. Fierce winds rattled the windows as thunder cracked through the sky. I had gathered with the other children in the common room, our faces pale from the storm and the stories we'd shared earlier. We huddled together for warmth, tried to ignore the oppressive silence that seemed to settle over the orphanage as the hours passed. But then we heard it, a noise like heavy footsteps, each one reverberating through floorboards. The kind of sound that makes your stomach tighten, knowing that whatever it is, it's not something you want to face. I looked around the room at the other children, their faces filled with fear. Andrew, my closest friend in that place, was the first to speak. "It's just the wind," he said, though his voice trembled. We all knew better. It wasn't the wind. And that's when Sarah stood up. She was older than most of us, a girl of 15 with dark eyes that always seemed to carry a weight of knowledge beyond her years. I think it was her defiance, her need to prove herself, that made her the one to volunteer to investigate. "I'll go check it out," she said, the bravado in her voice masking the fear that all of us could feel. "Don't," I pleaded, but my voice was drowned out by the rumbling of thunder. But Sarah was already walking toward the stairs, Andrew following behind her, despite his obvious unease. I don't know why I didn't stop them. I suppose I was too scared to move, too frozen in place by the growing sense of dread. It wasn't until I heard their footsteps on the stairs, slow, deliberate, as though they were being drawn into something, that I stood and followed them, unable to let them go alone. The staircase groaned beneath our feet as we ascended, the temperature dropping with every step. The heat of the common room was replaced by an unnatural chill that clawed at our skin. By the time we reached the door to the attic, it was as though we had crossed a threshold into another world, a place that was not bound by the rules of time or nature. The door was ajar, a sliver of darkness beckoning us forward. Sarah pushed the door open and stepped inside first, Andrew hesitating behind her. I was about to follow when I felt it, the cold, sharp, tangible force that slammed into my chest, pushing me backward. It was like something alive, something malevolent, had sensed our intrusion. The door slammed shut, sending an echo through the hallway that made the walls tremble. "You shouldn't have come here," a voice hissed from within the attic. It wasn't the voice of any living person. It was something old, something hungry. I could feel it clawing at my mind, trying to slip into my thoughts. And then The temperature plummeted even further. So cold it was painful. I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick, suffocating. Sarah screamed, a blood-curdling scream that sliced through the air like a knife. I pressed my hands over my ears, but the scream didn't stop. It just echoed louder in my head. That was when I saw it. A figure, a woman, floating just in front of Sarah, her hollow eyes staring at us through the darkness. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Only the feeling of despair, like a wave of hopelessness crashing over me. And then everything went black. The next thing I remember is waking up in my bed. My head was pounding, my body trembling as though I had just run a marathon. The storm had passed, but the weight of what had happened lingered. I could hear the faint sound of someone crying, but when I looked around, no one was there. The darkness of the room pressing on me, thick and suffocating. It was then that I realized I had to see Sarah. I had to know if she was okay. But when I found her, her eyes were not the same. They were black, completely black, with no whites to be seen. She was no longer my friend. She was something else. "You should have stayed away," she whispered, her voice distorted, as though it came from somewhere far away. "Now you belong to it. We all belong to it." Before I could say anything, she turned and ran down the hallway, her footsteps heavy and dragging. I tried to follow, but my body wouldn't cooperate. It was as though something invisible was holding me in place. The fear I felt wasn't just a fear of the unknown. It was a fear of losing myself, of becoming something unrecognizable. That night, Sarah's behavior grew more erratic. She was not the girl I once knew. She spoke in tongues, her body contorting in ways that were unnatural. The other children, too, seemed to be changing, each of them affected by something unseen. Father Thomas, the elderly priest, arrived the following evening to perform an exorcism on the building itself, though we all knew it was too late. The darkness had already claimed us. The ceremony was horrific. The walls of the orphanage groaned as though they were alive, as though they could feel the exorcism taking place. The children screamed, screams that weren't entirely their own. Sarah was the first to collapse, her eyes rolling back in her head as she shrieked at the top of her lungs, "Let us go and we'll spare your souls." Father Thomas didn't stop. He chanted louder, more fervently, but the entity, whatever it was, fought back with strength that no mortal could withstand. It wasn't just the children who were affected. It was a whole building, as though the very foundation was being torn apart by the malevolent force that resided there. By the end of that night, there were only a few of us left. Some had been claimed by whatever darkness had taken hold of the orphanage. Others had fled, never to return. I don't know what happened to Sarah. I never saw her again after that night, and the others, the ones who had been there before, left town as quickly as they could. St. Augustine's orphanage stands abandoned now, a forgotten relic at the edge of town. The wind still howls through its broken windows, and the walls still whisper in the dark. There are rumors, whispers of those who have tried to visit, only to disappear without a trace. But no one dares to speak of it anymore. The building remains a shadow of its former self, haunted by the ghosts of those who were lost. The legend lives on, and I know, deep in my bones, that there is no escaping what happened in that place. Once you've been touched by the darkness, it never truly lets you go.